What's good, everybody? This is Dario Hunt from Living Life Fearless, and I'm back with another reaction, this time to Preacher Season 3. So, let's talk about it. So, I finally got around to watching the latest season of Preacher, a show that I've been following since its debut. And ever since its debut, I think has been one of the most overlooked and underrated shows currently on cable TV. And that has to do with the fact that it is such an obscure property. If you are not big into the comic universe, it is one that you have probably never heard of and one that you wouldn't really have a reason to check out. But in my last two reactions, I have been imploring people to give this one a chance because it is one of the better and most interesting shows out there at the moment. So if you want to see my general thoughts and feelings and opinions about the overall backstory of the entire show as a whole, you can head over to the site where I have my writers for season 1 and season 2. With this reaction, I just want to jump straight into the craziness that is season 3. Slight spoilers ahead, of course. So season 1 was a bit divisive between fans and critics, where it was a bit more of a slow burn, and it really took the time to world build. Whereas season 2, it just upped the ante to a whole new level. And season 3, going into season 3, which picks up right after season 2, they really had no choice and no direction but to go full on comic book and full on outlandish. And that is exactly what we got in season 3. Like, don't get me wrong, season 1 and season 2 were always full of moments that, you had to definitely suspend disbelief for. But season 3 is pretty much every episode now that you just kind of have to just shrug it off and say, hey, this is the world that they're living in. Because quite honestly, at this point, they are basically like superheroes, the way that they manage to get through all of the fucking unreal and insane situations that they find themselves in. And not to mention that there's really no more mystery surrounding any of the characters because they show everything. You finally get to see the face of God, and you finally see the devil in person and how he acts and interacts. And it is as zany and over the top as you would kind of expect. But unlike those first two seasons where the story was really centered around Jesse, Tulip, and Cassidy, this one, they are at the most odds as they ever been, and they never really seem to get on the same page a lot of the time. In fact, a lot of the time, they are all on their own separate arcs, not even really working together. And while it kind of made sense at the beginning, it started to feel really forced as the season went on, and it kind of dragged the show down. Instead of being that more fun, enjoyable experience, it was just a bit overly dark and confrontational. And that sentiment applies to Jesse himself throughout this entire season, because at least in the prior two seasons, even though he was never a good guy, he did have a lot of redeemable moments and a lot of redeemable aspects on. But in this season, a lot of those aspects seem to get pushed to the side, and you really see kind of the darkest sides of him throughout. And honestly, in this entire season, there really aren't any good guys at all, except for Arseface, who, is just a victim of his circumstance once again. And that storyline of Arseface and Hitler really doesn't go anywhere interesting this year. And even including the Saint of Killers, he was very underutilized, and he did not feel nearly as menacing or threatening or as important as he did in season 2. And I feel like that was one of the high points of season 2 for me, and one of the high points of the series overall. And by the way the last season ended, I was really, really looking forward to this season in particular, in seeing, more of Jesse's backstory and how he came to be the person he is and the people that raised him, because you just hear so many terrible things about them and you just come to expect, just the worst part of it. And while we do get a few moments here and there, I think it was pretty underwhelming in terms of, his family. I don't know, it didn't really go anywhere. It felt like just one giant circle, and even though you did get a definitive conclusion at the end, it didn't really feel earned. And the fact that he spent the entirety of the season without his power made it even a bit more of a drag, because the whole time you were just kind of waiting for him to get it. And by the time he gets it, the season is over. But Harry Starr is still a rather interesting character, even though he is pretty one note in his desires. But I think he still has the most interesting dynamic between him and Jesse in this season. But the scenes between Jesse, him, and the Pope and the whole Grail situation towards the end of the season is so fucking wacky and over the top that it almost becomes slapstick. And while it was good for a couple laughs at the beginning, it definitely dragged on a bit too much for me. And I really just feel like that is my overall feeling about the season as a whole, that they went so excessive with it that it kind of loses all sense of consequence. One bright spot of the season for me was Cassidy. He started out as one of the most unlikable characters of the show, which was a bit disappointing to see because he has always been a fan favorite. But as the season went on, he definitely took a more interesting turn, and I think him going on his own adventure was a right decision for him, where you kind of get to know more about him as a character aside from being around Jesse and Tulip. And, he seems to have the most moral compass out of them all and the most, redeemable quality. So I found myself rooting for him more than any of the other characters on the show by the end of the season. But all in all, I just really felt like the whole balance of the season was off, from the characters and their interactions with each other to the tone. It didn't really know which direction it wanted to take. And with it being so over the top compared to the first two seasons, that it's hard to see where they're going to go with the next season. You kind of get a teaser into the direction it's going to go, and it just feels like a video game. And, some people might really like that because it is probably the most comic booky it's ever been to this point. But I do like even my comic book at its adapted properties to still have some sort of realism and consequence to them. And it just didn't really feel like it had any of that in this season. But I am still excited enough about season 4, and I do want to see how the overall story ends. I just hope that they have a more interesting arc for some of the characters in season 4, and that they bring some of that natural chemistry they had in the first 2 seasons back. But for those of you that did watch season 3, what do you guys think about it? How do you think this stacks up compared to season 1 and season 2? Were you expecting a bit more? Do you think it went too far over the top? What do you think is going to happen in season 4? Let me know in the comments down below. And of course, if you are talking about any spoilers, please give people a heads up before you go ahead and spoil the season for them. And if you want to leave your own ratings and reactions to this show and everything else I react to, you can head on over to the official site where you can leave your own ratings and reactions for this and everything else. If you have anything that you would personally like me to react to, you can also let me know in the comments down below. And if you like any of the gear I rock in these videos like this or this, you can also have a site and grab some from the store for yourself. As always, thank you guys for joining me. If you're liking these videos, please smash that like and subscribe button for me. I'll be back shortly with more reactions. But until then, I will catch you guys soon. Peace.